Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much. What a celebration today we have. It's International Women's Day, and here we are acknowledging the women around the world that are forging their pathway, making their journey in so many different situations as we look to the globe and see what's happening around the world. So thank you for being here. Thank you for holding the circle. Thank you for your commitment. So appreciate you being here. My name is Karen Downs and I'm a founder of FemmeQ. I want to start by giving my gratitude and appreciation to my co-founders, Alexandra Feldner, Silla Elworthy, and Kirsten Luber. And I want to say that today we are on a journey together and all of us are shining lights in this future that we are creating. So whilst we initiated something called FemmeQ, which I want to introduce you to, why did we name such a thing as feminine intelligence and what do we mean by it? But most importantly, to acknowledge every single person that's on the call, no matter what gender you ascribe to or assign yourself to. The feminine intelligence is everywhere in everyone. We see it in our Mother Earth. I'm sitting here in Costa Rica with the howling monkeys in front of me, and I woke up this morning to the butterflies, the birds, the howling monkeys, and Mother Nature streaming into my room. And I'm grateful for her most of all as our host, as she hosts us every day and gives breath to our life. So gratitude to the mothers around the world who have all brought us into the world. So if we just take a moment to acknowledge our mothers, because none of us would be here without her bringing us into the world. And of course, our fathers, co-parenting, co-partnering, but we were housed in her body for 9 months. So let's just take a moment to acknowledge mothers all over the world on International Women's Day. Prayers to them, be it present or past, wherever they are. Thank you. So I also want to acknowledge, as I did my co-founders, I want to acknowledge Jerome, who's supporting us today, is our partner who's so devoted and partners with us in FemmeQ. And also, most importantly, Karen Waldridge. Karen's been with us on the journey, not with us, we are the journey. Karen's been on the journey for 5 years when we began and when we launched one of our events in London. So thank you, Karen, for being here and being the supportive sister on the path. Erin, thank you so much for being here today to co-host, and most importantly, our guest speaker, Indra. So I'd like to introduce the two of them, and then I'll tell you a little bit about how the session will go. So firstly, Erin, who is now a potent and powerful partner in FemmeQ. Erin's a certified heart math trainer, a Nam yoga instructor and universal Kabbalistic counselor. She awakens us to our interconnectedness and how inner peace of one has a ripple effect in others. A co-founder and director of the Water Bearers, which empowers women around the world by providing them with access to clean water. She has participated 4 times in UN's Commission on the Status of Women and Children, and she lives in the USA and is a proud mother of her 2 beautiful daughters. Indra, my dear friend and colleague, and Indra I met through FemmeQ actually many years ago, and we've shared our lives, our friendship and our sisterhood very strongly in the last 2 years, and now staunch strategic partners in bringing the feminine through in everything we do. Indra is the founder and co-initiator of the Alternative Global, a socio-political platform serving systemic transformation. Just as recently as on March 1st, they launched Planet A, which you'll hear about today, a new ground to stand on for the flourishing future possible for us all. The Alternative Global publishes a daily alternative news blog, develops Cosmo-local agency networks called CANs, and connects planetary regeneration projects. A socio-psychotherapist, writer and consultant on soft power. Again, we'll be underscoring that today. Clients have included the Danish and Brazilian governments, World Economic Forum and NATO. Her book, The Politics of Waking Up, Power and Possibility in the Fractal Age, was the Times Literary Supplement Book of the Year in 2021. She's based in the UK and is the proud mother of a wonderful son. So It's interesting when you read out script like I just did versus know the heart and soul of someone. So I read your scripts about what you do, your identity, but all of us on the call today, hopefully can put our identities aside, even though you needed to know who's who here, but put our identities aside for being in a curious and in the wonderment and the mystery of the feminine, what that brings into the world and how it can be expressed through politics and many other facets, because the political agenda is so critical at this time. So I also want to acknowledge the breaking of our hearts that might be happening at the moment and not step over that for what's happening in our world, and why this conversation, why this time, why this moment is so important. So thank you everyone for giving up your time and your energy and your participation and commitment to be here. So thank you. So I'd like to share my screen and tell you a little bit about FemmeQ, because FemmeQ has had its own transformation from when we first began. When we began back in 2015 and we sat down, the four of us sat down together, we were concerned that policies and what was called the policies and rules and regulations that were coming about for equality, gender inclusivity, were not being effective. They were not affecting the psyche, the deep transformation that needs to happen inside all of us, where we recognize that we are all interconnected, we are all one, we've been nominated to gender, and yet now how we're operating is othering the other. Different to me becomes the other to me. And so when we sat down together, we said, what would cause a breakthrough in what's happening in the world? Because on one level, it is about women. So it's a complex, and we are talking about women today. It's a complex subject. And at the same time, the feminine principles, yin and yang, right and left hemispheres, however we interpret it, biologically, we are different. Biologically, we have something, a consciousness that runs through our system according to our gender, that comes through in everything we do. So we were looking at this very complex subject. Is it about women? Is it about the psyche? Is it about, what is it about? And we tried to embrace it all by naming something, feminine intelligence, that exists in all genders and in fact is inherent in how we live if we live according to the principles of Mother Nature. She is the feminine principle, regeneration, cycles, rhythms, all of the things that move through our system, but also the intelligence that is a wisdom that produces and brings life to life. And so we called it FemmeQ, and we've held now 5 international events around the world and touched the hearts and minds of thousands. And we're very proud, and I'm very proud to continue it as the director of FemmeQ as we take this forward. So I'd like to share my screen now and just take you through. 1 second. After running hundreds of webinars, patience is so needed with myself. So, Jerome, am I okay? Share screen. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, it's good.
Great. So here we are starting. This is the theme of our day, with the politics of waking up with Indra. And I would like just to quickly move through these slides. So FemmeQ, our mantra is that we're pioneering the possible, and is very much about today. What does that mean? A pioneer is someone that doesn't have a map, they have a destination, they have an imagination that's taking them into the future. And that's really what we're speaking about today. We are pioneers and in the imagination of another world that is possible. And it's so perfect to have Indra with us today. And we are calling all guardians of humanity's future. I just want to quickly go through these so I don't take too much time, but FemmeQ stands for feminine intelligence, the shift in consciousness that is key to our survival and our future. It is our stand, our mission, and a global movement. FemmeQ is a deep knowing that we are all part of a living universe, an innate sense of responsibility for the survival of human and planetary life. The application of feminine intelligence is the concentration of love, energy, and life force to someone or something that is of the greatest importance beyond self-interest. So I invite you to consider today that no one has mastery over this topic, and it is a mystery. We are still delving into what this means to all of us, but this is a beginning. So we are working toward within knowing and understanding that within every living creature lies infinite energy and possibility, and it's encoded into our system. Awakening, and the emergence of that is critical. And how we'll do that and how we'll talk about it today is importantly our approach. This comes from the work of Joanna Macy. I'm a trained facilitator in Joanna Macy's work of the work that reconnects, and have been working with those theories, principles, and rituals and ceremony for the last 20 years. And this was a model that Joanna created of how do we create a life-sustaining future and move out of the industrial growth destruction that we've been in. It's the inner development to strengthen our capacity. It's taking action, which is direct action, intervening and taking action on the things that are not working and what we need to stop doing, and changing the system, which is the transformation we need. We're transformation catalysts. I'm going to say a little bit more about what that is later in the session, and distinguish these for everyone, and how we're working. Most importantly is the transformation that needs to occur, where feminine intelligence needs to go to in every aspect of our system, infused, embedded in leadership, in the ways of being, in the ways of acting, to bring about the transformation we need on our planet. And later on, I'll speak about how we're going to do that. So I want to stop sharing and just really presence the context of this conversation is awakening and emerging of the feminine in us all for the transformation that's needed. So thank you, everyone. And now I'd like to say just one more thing that for me is very important, because I'm Australian, I've got a very feisty energy, as many of us have, to bring things, activate things in the world. I was sharing with our team earlier when we entered into the Zoom room this morning, how I noticed that how important it is to hold the dynamic flow of the masculine and feminine that's constantly moving through me. It is not a static state that I'm one thing and then I'm the other. When we discover and awaken within us what's needed, and we bring what's needed for the future and hold that future in our hearts, the energy system of the masculine and feminine is always in flow within us. But also there are particular things on this International Women's Day that I know my body responds to. For 30 years, my body responded to the cycles of the moon. My body responded to the life-giving force of what I had to do when I was bearing a child. So there are very things I don't want to step over on International Women's Day that are unique to women as well, because it is that day we're celebrating. So please, I'd like to hand it over to Erin, if I can hand it to Erin, and Jerome will prepare us shortly, but Erin's going to do a heart opening space, followed by our presentation to Indra, and then question time. So Erin, if you could please begin, and welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's so nice to see all of you here and to feel just the presence of all of us showing up for something greater. So in order to access this feminine intelligence, it's through the heart. In the mind, we become dualistic. That's the level of the problems, right? Separation, but it's through the heart where we really can access this intelligence and a deeper space and intuitive guidance. So with that, I just invite everybody to close your eyes if you're able to, and just focus all of your attention on your heart, on this portal, on this connected space. Now just imagine that your breath is flowing in through your heart, breathing in a little deeper and a little slower than usual. And then you'll exhale from your heart. Breathing into your heart, a sense of inner ease and calm, being fully present here. And as you exhale, it's from the heart. And as you breathe into the heart, the sense of ease and calm and peace, you activate that in your system. And as you exhale that calm and that peace, you radiate and you share it with everyone on this call. Breathing in a sense of peace directly into your heart. And as you exhale, you radiate and you share that out into this collective field that we're co-creating together. Breathing into your heart, a sense of love for yourself, your family, for others. Activating that within, and as you exhale from the heart, you share that sense of love and care with one another. Taking one more deep breath into your heart, activating care, love, compassion. And as you exhale, you share that with one another. You share that with all women, all girls, all beings. And now gently opening your eyes, putting a smile on your face, knowing that together we are co-creating this future and this field of possibilities, and it is through the heart that we are the most powerful. So with that, we would like to put you into breakout rooms. Now that we're centered in the heart, you're going to be able to meet your brothers and sisters from around the world. You'll be in groups of 3. When you get in there, you're going to introduce yourself. You'll continue to try and stay present and anchored in this heart space, in this feminine intelligence, this deeper listening. You'll get in and you'll say, "Hi, my name is Erin. I was born in Detroit, Michigan, but now I live in Los Angeles, California. Thank you for being here," and really acknowledge the other person on the other side so that they feel seen and heard with a simple thank you for being, and then sharing just in 1 minute why this conversation, why showing up here is important to you. For me, I have 2 teenage daughters. This is the most important conversation, and the most important thing for me is trying to activate this feminine intelligence within everyone. But each person shows up here with a point in their heart of that true connection or care of what it is that they want to see into the world. So as we're speaking, we're bringing into the present moment the future that we're wanting to create. Okay, so about 5 minutes in the breakout rooms. So each person has just about a minute to share who they are, to say thank you, and why this conversation is important. And I really just invite you to, yes, and Jerome will put into the chat the questions, but I really just invite you to try and listen deeper to the essence of what's being shared by the other person. Okay, this is the experience of feminine intelligence in action. This is love in action.
Okay, I'm going to create them now.
Have fun. So welcome back, everyone. I know there was a little bit of technical difficulty for some, so we ended up having a rather large breakout session between us co-hosts. But I'm just curious, I see some smiles, I see some twinkles in the eyes, what that experience was like. If anybody would like to share, perhaps you heard a word or made a new connection with somebody. Shannon Amos, yes, please share.
Sorry, I can't. Can you put your hand up, please, or click your raise your hand, because I can't see everyone in one screen.
Shannon, can you just unmute?
She can't unmute herself.
No.
Jerome has
Oh,
to.
okay.
There I am. Hi,
There you-
everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Erin. Thank you, everyone here. I found the breakout room to be really beautiful. I reconnected actually with Brom in the Netherlands. I'm in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. And what was so beautiful about connecting there is meeting a young person who is so inspirational. To hear someone who is young and so heart-centered gives me hope for our future. And I'm just grateful to share space and to be here today. And thank all of you.
Thank you, Shannon. Anybody else care to share what that experience was like? Maybe one more person? Yes, Carrie.
Yes, I'm just so heartened to have reconnected with Melanie, who with whom I began this journey. Melanie says 2015 at Schumacher College, Rising Women, Rising World. And so, yes, it's so amazing. I'm just delighted. So thank you. I'm already heartened, and it's not even 9 o'clock Calgary time.
Thank you for sharing. It's pretty amazing when we get into that heart space, the intelligence that weaves between all of us, right? That's what we're accessing with feminine intelligence. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Karen, to start the dialogue with Indra.
Thank you. So one of the things that I'm reminded of, especially as we've come into this space, of all the familiar faces that I see here, Kerry, as you said, you and Melanie back in Schumacher College when Scylla Elworthy and I were leading the facilitator training on interaction. Thank you for being here. For Rafaela, who's coming in from Germany, who was part of our team when we launched the first FemmeQ event in Berlin, and we had no idea what we were doing and the trust that's required. So a big element of trust is required to have faith in ourselves, to know what is true, and to emerge that into the future we want to create. So that is very much part of who I know Indra as. And why I'm leading in with that is my past with Indra has been infused with many different conversations and many different interactions. And we've been working together on something called Bounce Beyond for the last 2 years. Bounce beyond the economic systems that's currently destroying or impacting our world in such a destructive way. But here is Indra, who I acknowledge as having the most extraordinary trust in yourself, counterbalanced with often the concern and the doubt of what you're doing and who you are in the world. Fortunately, that only lasts one moment and then you step up again. So one of the things I want to acknowledge you for, Indra, is the incredible fierce urgency of now, with the soft power and heart that you bring to everything you do. And it makes me cry just to be here with you. So touched. So thank you. So I'm not going to say any more because then I will cry. So please, Indra, please begin and share with us. So Indra's going to do a presentation. We're going to have a breakout and then there will be question time. So please.
Well, thanks very much, Karen. And thank you for opening that space and really introducing me in that way, because it's very true that I hover constantly, almost minute by minute, between being in this space of incredible doubt and feeling incapable and failed, and then wanting to bring something and knowing the urgency of what it is that I have to bring. And that through the work of FemmeQ and through everyone being present here today, I know that I can share with you that I'm only providing a space for what you're bringing. That's really what I'm doing here. I'm providing a space or opening a space for what you're bringing. And that in itself is a feminine power, the way that I see it. So I'm going to share some slides with you. And in the course of sharing these slides, it's a form of sort of getting out of the way. I want to invite you to think about images that come to your mind. I'm suggesting some images and I'm inviting you to bring yours as well. But in the course of these next few slides, I'm going to invite, I'll be in conversation with Erin and Karen. They'll either stop me or I'll just pause and we'll think about some of the slides that I'm sharing. And in total, it'll be about half an hour, and then we'll be inviting your voices back into the room as well. So on this International Women's Day, just to thank you again, Karen and Erin and Karen, the two Karens, for inviting me to share space with all of you. Which I'm now going to do. And can we all see this? Yeah, can you see it all? Yeah, that's great. Okay, so I do want to, as I'm sure is present in the room, I really do want to start in this present moment where we find ourselves. And as I woke up today, and as I've been waking up for the past week and a bit more, I find myself back almost in the 20th century. And as someone who is working actively to show and to platform the progress that we've been making for the past 30 years around new forms of intelligence arising, I have found myself somehow jerked back into the 20th century, which I've been referring to as the century of war. So this is quite a challenge to be in a public space which is filled in this way with these images. I hope you recognize this Picasso painting that hangs in the United Nations, which really tries to capture the essence of war, the chaos, the possibility of pain, and the sheer absurdity, really, of turning to this kind of power when we are in conflict with each other. But of course, war is not the only crisis that we're facing at this moment. It's just the one that is occupying our headlines. We'll all be just as aware that the full planetary crisis that we're in day out, is this one which is the burning planet. And the 10-year window, actually, that we've given ourselves to try to do something about that. And this 10-year window is really what I'm inviting you to think about when we think about something specific around the emergence of feminine energy. Because feminine energy is something that is always present, but it sits more in the yin space than it sits in the yang. But with the invitation of the crises that we're facing, the multiple crises that we're facing, we're requiring ourselves to bring more of our feminine energy into the public space. And in fact, at this moment, to really take over the public space in many ways, to be able to move ourselves in a new direction. And of course, here's the third crisis that we've all been part of in recent months, in fact, over these past couple of years. The way that the environmental crisis and the political crisis leads us to these kinds of defensive positions, finding ourselves having to move back into our homes, move into lockdown, wear face masks. It's almost as if all across the planet, we've been forced back into this yin position to consider and contemplate what it is that the planet now needs to change the course of history. So the moment that I started my work in a more public way was in the UK in about 5 days before the Brexit referendum occurred, and I hope you're all familiar with what I'm referring to there, which was a politically contrived need to make a decision about our political future, which divided our country profoundly, not only divided us from Europe, but divided us as a country and even divided us in our families. Families found themselves divided against each other. And maybe even it would be true to say that some of us found ourselves profoundly divided against ourselves. So this era that we've been living through, in which political power has worked to really divide society against itself, is the very thing that I want to pay attention to now. So in this period, I wrote a book called The Politics of Waking Up, Power and Possibility in the Fractal Age. And what I wanted to draw attention to is not so much that we're trying to build something new. It's not so much that we need to give rise to new institutions. It's not so much the long, hard task ahead of us. And it's more the waking up to what has always been present. The waking up to a power that we didn't really know we have. A waking up to complexity, but also agency. And essentially that the power of the feminine is not to simply bring women in a sort of balancing between men and women. Through the feminine energy, the waking up is to the wholeness of things. The wholeness of things. So ultimately, that's what I'm going to be thinking about when we're talking about waking up to feminine energy today. So in this very essential diagram that I have here, on the right, you'll see something that you're very familiar with, which is the yin yang symbol. And what I'm trying to say is that always lying in the yin has been the feminine power, feminine agency. And the way that we've experienced that in our societies has been that the feminine has reigned strong in the personal, internal life, in the domestic life, within our communities. It's not that it hasn't been operational. It has held communities together. It has held families together. It holds us together as human beings with integrity. And yet in the public space, it's almost missing altogether. So the question is, how does this feminine intelligence take form at this time? And what is the impact of that? So moving from the wholeness to the forms that wholeness can manifest and the impact upon the planet. That is the question that I bring. So again, using quite crude and simple diagrams, this is what I would describe as moving from a more hard power approach to a more soft power approach. And you'll see from the title above that I nearly cut out this title, but I thought that it was appropriate in this moment, because when I first delivered this talk about moving from a hard power approach to a soft power approach, it was for a presentation that I did at NATO in Brussels. And as you can imagine, it caused some consternation. And in fact, the girl who invited me to give this presentation later was fired because it was so offensive to them in some way that hard power was going to lose its influence and soft power was going to become much more defining as we go into the modern age. And thus it has proven, and I'm going to show you how. What we understand as soft power is really not simply an equivalent to hard power. In other words, it's not a coercive action of a new kind. It's a way of being and developing. So we can best understand that through being able to observe nature, that nature doesn't work in arrows going forward. It doesn't work in lines. It works through circular development. It connects everything to everything. beneath the ground, not only are there roots that make the tree strong, but those roots are reaching out to other roots, connecting and forming mycelial networks of intelligence. So as we have traditionally thought of the tree as rising upwards in a vertical line, nature shows us that there is no vertical line without this constantly expanding circles that support the vertical line. And there's no tree without the mycelial network. So we're living in this age now where this kind of intelligence becomes very much more prevalent. And COVID, in fact, has caused a return to seeking and inquiring around nature in a very practical way. People migrating from cities to the countryside, people yearning for open spaces in the park. We are connecting and reconnecting ourselves to nature in response to the crisis. So I wonder if at that point, Karen and Erin, you wanted to reflect in any way.
Thank you. It's so perfect. I was just, and then I held back. Thank you, Indra. So yes, for sure. The thing that I'd love to point to and also ask you to expand on is two things. One is that when we name something like tree, we give it an identity, versus when we name something, we can also lose relationship with it. So you've expanded on that by describing the tree in its upright form, in its interconnectedness, in its moving out, in its depth and its breadth. So one of the things in naming something, because we are talking on International Women's Day, the minute we name woman and man, we're differentiating something. And what you and I are profoundly, I think, connected on, and I'd love you to expand on it, is the other word that you used is integrity. And one of the things that I say with FemmeQ is that in order to restore integrity to the system, we have to look at what's missing. So if a bicycle wheel is out of integrity because it's lost its spoke, we have to restore integrity to its workability. So I'm being very pragmatic. It's an engineering term versus a moralistic term in when we use integrity. So the two things, Indra, because that's really struck me, is when you're speaking about the integrity of the system and the naming of something, when we define it as something other than ourselves, of how we can separate from it. Can you comment on anything that I've just suggested?
Yeah, I think this is something that perhaps we could all dwell on and think about. For me, integrity means coherence, standing for and remaining standing for, but to bring into coherence so that you're not at odds with yourself, that somehow you become aligned with your true purpose. You become aligned, in fact, with the crisis that you're facing. And there's a non-duality about it as well for me, where it hangs together. And if I look at nature and the way that there's so much diversity within nature, and at the same time it all hangs together beautifully, that's when I think about the integrity.
Beautiful, thank you.
I'll continue. So I want us to consider that in the last 30 years, we've been in a revolution. It's not that a revolution is called for. We've been in a revolution for 30 years. And I'm equating that with the birth of the internet. Because when the internet was born, it was a revolution of connectivity. Suddenly, anyone with an iPhone, or sorry, excuse me, that was a bit of a brand call. Anybody with a mobile phone of any kind is able to access immense amounts of information that they never had access to before. They're able to connect with each other in small groups, in large groups. The interconnectivity was, as an experience, an explosion of potential energy in the life of any one person. And I remember living through that period myself from the late 80s until now, and just experiencing an exponential curve of possibility through connectedness. But in this era of connectedness, something else became very evident. The learning that one could have, whether it is through the sciences or learning about history or learning about other people's emotions and identities, was happening in so many different ways. But what was fascinating and interesting to share is how this networked self is reflected not only in the world outside of us as the internet, but it's echoing the networked self that exists within the body and exists within the mind. So increasingly, this world outside of us is a direct reflection of the way that we operate from within. So this coming into wholeness, this seeing the coherence between the internal and the external, is very much part of the feminine energy arising. And the way that I experience it, when I observe it in this way, is that these 30 years have been an era of feminine intelligence arising and becoming explicit in the public sphere. The question remains, how does one live within that energy? How does one work with these networks as these interconnected, interdependent networks? Because when the masculine is still dominating the public sphere, this energy is getting harnessed by the old system. So, for example, we all experienced the early days of Facebook, when there was a lot of free connection and people were astounded by the friendship and friendship circles that were being created. And then a certain moment when everything changed, algorithms were set in a new way, capitalism, in a sense, took over the system again. And now it feels like a dangerous place to be, where maybe your mind is being hijacked by the growth economy again. So this movement of potential energy emerging into the public space and then being hijacked again by the old system, which simply wants to capitalize and harness the energy of the people, is something that we've witnessed. But yet again, we can return to nature. So these images, again, are always available to us. The images of the many people trying to, with their initiatives, work together. And I'm drawing attention to these two phenomena in particular. On the right, we have the murmuration of birds. What I love about that image that it offers me is the possibility of many, many people doing quite individual things, but still being able to move together in a beautiful shape and create something very beautiful together. This, I would say, is not the same as a classic idea of collaboration. Collaboration is something else again, and can only happen in certain pockets. But whole world, planet-wide collaboration may not be the answer to our problems. Maybe cooperation, where there is more understanding and innate respect for each other's work that can produce something very beautiful, maybe the thing that we can imagine happening now. And on the left, that's a picture of fractals and how fractals can emerge incredibly beautifully. Again, holds the possibility of every one of us holding the whole system within us as a body and operating with each other as multiple systems in a fractal way. So when we think about growth, we're not thinking about who's scaling this, how can we scale this? It's more about how all of us are emerging into our wholeness, and through fractal emergence, something much bigger and planetary is possible, but in a way that each one of us can hold and have some responsibility for. And here's something that I know that, Karen, you talk about very often, which is about the need for the womb, the need for the incubator. So when we're talking about a lot of the energy that's arising now coming through communities, through families, through individuals becoming whole, appears on the surface like grassroots activism. But this grassroots activism, or the many things that are occurring across the planet, cannot simply move into relationship with each other without some kind of incubator, some kind of container, so that things that seem very fragmented can move into relationship with each other. And this is what I mean by, you know, a pattern of incubation, or a pattern of wombs, if you like, where diverse and disparate energies may be working at a town level, or maybe working at a city level, or even in a neighborhood, nevertheless needs an incubator in which to become something whole. So the importance of incubating is very, very important as we emerge a new socioeconomic political system. And I think I might just stop there for a minute and invite, I don't know, Erin, if you have any thoughts about this womb-like aspect of any emerging socio-political system, or Karen, which is of course essential and part of what the feminine brings to society.
I think if I can jump in, Erin, for a moment and then pass it over to you. Indra, something that way back in the days when we were formulating FemmeQ, I made an inquiry about, I was speaking to Rupert Sheldrake, the scientist. I was at one of his workshops, and he said, he was talking about every organ in our body has an intelligence, and they all cooperate to make the whole, and are continually attempting to restore homeostasis in the body and have us be in balance. And I went up to him at the end of the workshop and I said, if every organ in the body has an intelligence, there must be womb intelligence. And he looked at me curiously and said, wow, I think you're onto something. And so my colleagues, Scylla, Alexandra and Kirsten, were going, I think you're crazy, whatever, do your research. It wasn't crazy, but, you know, possible, let's see. And I started researching, and I did find so much evidence of what exists in the womb as intelligence, of life bringing forward life. And one of the things that I've been saying recently, and I have a million different ways to talk to people about FemmeQ in context, but one of the things I've been saying recently is the past, present, and future exists inside of us. And Indra, you and I talk about, you know, the future is here, it's inside of us. It's just that we can't, through the system that we've been a part of, we haven't been able to access it. And now we're awakening and emerging, as you've been speaking about. But I think this notion, especially because I want to be very specific today on International Women's Day, that women have this past, present, and future in their bodies. When a woman falls pregnant, she has carried the eggs and the ovaries from her ancestors, from her grandmother through her mother. She's present to what's going on in her body. She's always thinking about the future. But whether you're a mother or whether you're not, this intelligence exists inside a woman's body. And so I can't not on this day, not underscore that, because it's incredibly important we recognize the diversity and the difference biologically and the consciousness that exists in our bodies. So thanks for bringing that through. Erin, do you want to comment or ask or provoke anything?
Yeah, I would just say that we are all pregnant with possibility, whether we're male or female. We all have this ability, this womb and this incubation capacity. It is unique to feminine as we give birth, but this is what we're speaking about with feminine intelligence, is this activation, is this relationship. And the first cells that form of a fetus are the heart cells. Later comes the mind. So there is intelligence to be able to access it. It is about coming to the heart. In heart math terms, which has done all this research on the heart and the mind, they come to know it as coherence within the entire system. When you focus your attention on the heart, you literally change the signal that goes from the heart to the mind, and you become harmonious. You become an optimal, energetic being that's able to, again, incubate any future creation. Has to happen through the heart.
Thank you. Beautiful reflections. Thank you. So I just wanted to, in this final part, just draw attention to what has been arising in our question in my work of, if politics is broken, what's the alternative? And what we've perceived is the phenomenon of what we call community agency networks all over the planet. So what is a community agency network? It's people arising, wanting to take action, moving into relationship with each other to form small microsystems which carry the whole system. And we call these cosmolocal cans. So cosmolocalism is the form that we've been waiting for that allows every person in a community to take part in whole planetary action. So some of you will be familiar with this picture. It's the picture that Transition Towns uses for their network. Transition towns, eco-villages, neighborocracy, municipalism, these are all forms of cosmolocal cans that are forming and have been forming for the last 10 or 15 years. And what we're trying to initiate through many different processes, working in partnership with many other people, is prototyping new cans, new cosmolocal community agency networks that hold this intelligence that I've been describing, and that help people to move towards responding to the crisis in a very human way by people coming together in the face of our current governments not being able to do that. So part of the new politics that arises through these cosmolocal cans is a relational culture. And you'll find now that there are new practices and methods of relational welfare, new forms of relational politics coming through, bearing all the DNA of the feminine that I've been describing. And here is a picture or a map, if you like, of Eleanor Ostrom's commoning principles, which take all of these into consideration when designing a new economy for the future. And I think you'd all, even just quickly glancing around there, would be able to see why she describes this as a feminine economy, which is in service to the whole planet. And as Erin and Karen rightly say, that men are also in service to this. That with women bringing the feminine intelligence, men honoring the feminine intelligence, we're moving into new economies that bring wholeness and connect the individual to the planet through the action of their communities. And what Karen referred to earlier on is an answer, in a way, a move that we've taken recently at the Alternative UK, in which we were asking the question, how can we really help people make the shift to this new possibility in the face of all the headlines and all the noise and the imagery that fills our public space at this time? How can we invite them to stand in the possibility of a radically different future? And in order to do that, on March the 1st, we gave birth, if you like, to this new idea of being able to stand on planet A. So planet A is not another place. It's not Mars. It's not what Elon Musk refers to when he says we need to go to a new planet in order to be able to start again. Planet A is something that exists now, in the here and now, that you can through doing really the work that Erin was doing with us at the beginning of this call, is to, in a way, close your eyes, move into that space in which all of this new action, these new institutions, these new initiatives, they're already arising. And then you open your eyes again and you find you're standing on a different ground. And that is the ground of future possible. And the action that we took on March the 1st was to name it and then to let go of it. In a sense, we're saying, here it is, occupy the future together on planet A. And this is a planet that is in, that we've opened in the era of feminine intelligence, moving back into the public space. And so I'd invite you to consider planet A as the place that we can stand on together. And from here, a future arising in which maybe for the first time, feminine intelligence reclaims the public space for the wholeness of ourselves, the wholeness of our planet, and the wholeness of the communities through which all of this can arise. So I'll stop sharing this here and come back. I think that I invite you now to comment or any more questions, or Karen and Erin, if you'd like, first of all, to reflect back. Can't hear you, Karen.
Firstly, thank you so much, Indra, and everyone for staying so focused and attentive. It felt like I could feel the energy of everyone holding the space for this important conversation. So thank you so much. Indra, I'm not sure if you prepared a question for the breakout group, did you? Is there a question that you would like to ask the group, because we're going to go into breakouts?
Yes. So what would it take for you to put your feet down on planet A and to experience your life as moving into the possible future with feminine intelligence? What would it take for you to be able to put your feet down on planet A and move into the future with feminine intelligence?
Beautiful. So Jerome, I'm not sure if you've got that, if you could type that into the chat, and then everyone move into the breakouts to respond to the question. What we'll do is when we come back, use the opportunity in the breakout rooms, if you can, to also provoke or express your questions that you have for Indra or any of us when you come back. So what would it take for you to put your feet down on planet A and move into the future with feminine intelligence? What would it take for you? And that's the important part. Your agency, your sovereignty, your knowing, your yearning. What would it take for you? So please, we're going to put you into the break and have that conversation, and then please also allow your questions to arise, and Indra will respond to those when we come back. So Jerome, if you can leave in the group 8 minutes would be great.
Yeah, will do. I'm just going to create them. So it's done automatically. So there may be between 2 and 4 in each room. But if anyone's on their own, I'll move them to somewhere else.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. I'll put the question into the breakouts again.
And Jerome, make sure everyone's able to speak, because last time some people weren't able to hear each other.
Indra, can you still hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Just want to say amazing. Thank you so much.
Mm.
So beautifully expressed, held with the fierce urgency of now and no pressure. So beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. I mean, to be honest, I felt that it was quite a challenge. The way that it came out, I felt it was very challenging and less than simply resonant, which sometimes it comes out that.
I'll just move you to another room, Trisha. Okay.
I was by myself in the breakout room. No one was there.
Yes.
So I chose to return back.
I was in the process of moving you, and you popped back.
Okay.
There's a lot of rooms. There are 15 rooms. It takes a while.
Okay. Would you like to put me back again in the?
I can try.
Not sure if you can. Okay.
No, I can't, because you've come back into this room. You're not on the list anymore, I'm afraid.
So I think
Suhaib, why don't
okay.
You
you?
meant to share with us.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I say.
Okay.
No mistakes. No
No
mistakes.
mistakes. Yeah, it's maybe wanting to happen this way. Actually, I wanted to understand more of this question. What would it take for me to step into planet A? Is it, for me, is about really to surrender, really. Is to surrender fully to this now moment and just operate from my heart and just access my intuition. And I'm just saying this, and I'm actually feeling already a vibration in my body. And when I do it, when I feel that, when I sense that, it's just I'm speaking truth, or I'm sensing truth. So really, it's about the surrender into this now moment and fully access my heart and allow it to inform me of what needs to happen next. So this is, I think, the surrender to trust what's in the heart.
I feel it. It's very powerful.
Yeah.
That, I think, is the soft power that Indra was referring to. Am I right, Indra? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's I think the surrender part of it's very powerful. It's the opposite of taking control. Erin, tell me more about how you understand soft power.
Well, looking through things that you have written, what struck me was the power of attraction. You talking about soft power, the power of attraction. And I think that is what happens when you get into your heart. It's accessing that electromagnetic field in a different way. It's accessing intuition and faith, as you said. So for me, soft power equates to accessing your heart's intelligence. And again, that's very different than the mind trying to control things, but knowing that we can become this portal or this bridge, this co-creative, place that's able to pioneer something on this planet A. I love that, like standing here now, surrendering into this now moment, but it's co-creating the future.
And I want to add, because it's something you and I, welcome, Steve. Great to see you here. We're just doing breakouts, but these people that are in this space at the moment didn't end up in a breakout room. So we're just having the conversation here, Steve, just so you're current to what we're up to. One of the things that Indra and I are often speaking about and is very present with all of us in FemmeQ is that the surrender and opening the heart and to the soft power requires being in action. So it also requires us taking our presence, our agency and our voice into shaping that future that we feel inside of us. And Indra, you spoke about it as integrity, of feeling coherence between our purpose, what we know and what we yearn for, and bringing that into the world, which is exactly what you've done with Planet A.
Yes, and also to remind us of the understanding of what soft power is in the international sphere. So if hard power is guns and money and the ability to force and to coerce outcomes, which is what you're hearing about in this current war situation. Soft power is the other kind of power. It's the power of narrative, the power of influence, the story that we can tell ourselves about what is going on. And being able to tell another story about what is happening now in the Ukraine, for example, to see it from other perspectives than simply the one that is about one side winning over another or fighting with violence, the nobility of violence, for example, to tell another story about what matters as people are fleeing their homes, about the shared impact and response from all over the globe about the distress that people are feeling that we are reverting to this kind of action again. The storytelling is the soft power and could well be, in the end, the thing that makes or breaks the outcome. The story, for example, of this leader who was a comedian and is now—
Indra, I'm going to have to ask you to pause for a second, because this is so important for the rest of the group coming back in. So
Right.
if you could pause on that, because it's so important about really distinguishing soft power and telling the new story. So thank you for letting me interrupt you, but it's critical that everyone— how long are they coming back in, Jerome? How long before?
I'm going to give them 2 minutes in like a minute.
Okay.
So, I mean, I can start now if you like.
Yeah, I think so, if you could.
Okay.
If you can give them a minute to come back in. Too important.
Yeah. And we are running a little behind, just conscious at that time.
Yeah. So Indra will come back in and we'll, if you can summarize with soft power, and then we'll complete with the steps forward, what's the way forward, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious if Steve has anything to share. I know you just got here, but I'm curious.
Appreciate being here, I guess. Sorry I got so late. I don't feel I know enough about the conversation to be able to be a constructive contributor.
I think your presence is the contribution, Steve. Yep. You're a partner to FemmeQ, an advocate and a co-creator with us in this space. So I really appreciate you coming in. And I know that you were delayed this morning, you couldn't join us. So thank you for being here. Your presence is important. I'll just wait for everyone to come back in. I think looks like everyone's back in. Yes, Jerome? Yeah. So thank you everyone for being in the conversation. And what we'd like to do is spend the next, firstly, Indra was just in our, in the main room, Indra started talking about soft power. So we wanted to bring you back in because it's an important point to take forward. But what we'd like to do is open up the forum for questions that arose. It may not be in response to the question because that might be the very thing for you to take away. So it can either be a response to the question.
Sorry, I've just had to mute you because there was a lot of background noise. I've muted everyone. I'm just going to unmute you again. Sorry.
That's okay. So the question, if you could use the raise hand button and raise your hand to either ask Indra a question or any of us a question, and or respond to the question that was asked in the chat room, if you'd like to share that, whichever. And so please go ahead.
So Trisha's got your hand up.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. I think this is both in relation to the question asked, as well as it sounds like what you were talking about in the larger group with around soft power. And it's in relation to, as someone who has been kind of feeling into planet A, stepping my feet in and feeling as if we're building the plane while flying it. So nowhere near we're fully embodied, but working towards that in a way where we're actively building it at the same time, and finding that we are still subject to the forces of extraction and exploitation and the dominant paradigm that is alive and well, that then affects us on this very local micro scale. And I do not know what that feminine intelligence is that allows us to dilute that energy that is coming in with so much force, so that we who are coming in with a much more subtle energy of just wanting to weave together, how we can not be so affected by those greater energies that are coming in. So I think it is that soft leadership, and I just don't, that's my question anyway. Thank you.
I also want to put, Trisha, thank you so much for joining us. I also want to put in context where you're sitting right now and where you're living and have been for many years in Osa in Costa Rica, working with local communities. You took over a school, an elementary school last year. You're building as Indra's been referring to as a CAN, which is the local community, and strengthening and supporting the local community. So it's a very important context you're asking the question from. Please, Indra.
So I really want to welcome your question, and I'm actually, it's very enriched by knowing where you're speaking from and what your work is, because in many ways, women like yourselves have been doing this work for so long, holding this space. And I would say that it's important to hold both of those spaces at the same time, if you can, the knowledge that there is an old system and the knowledge that there is also a planet A, somewhere to put your feet down on. And what I was going to try to explain before was that soft power and hard power are sometimes, they're compared to each other, but they operate in very, very different ways. And so therefore, soft power is not a new form of hard power. It's not a new form of getting stuff done, right? It's a new form altogether. It brings wholeness. And its vehicle is really stories, the storytelling that you can do from where you are that will influence the whole system. So if hard power is coercion, guns and money, soft power is the power of narrative, because through storytelling, you attract. People relate to you. They're able to hear you and see you in your wholeness. And what I would want to encourage you to be able to do is to find as much companionship as you can through, if you like, planetary level storytelling, to be able to hear that there are other people, communities like you all over the globe in the same challenge as you are in, and gain strength from knowing that actually your power, the power that you're bringing, the actions you're taking is in the ascendancy now. And the more that you tell your story about that, the more people can relate and gain from all of your work. If you might have thought at one point that you were working alone in a small place, in a country that's ignored by a lot of the mainstream media, today you are working in a country that's lionized, if you like. It's the country where the military, disappeared. It's the country where regenerative practices are becoming the solution. So actually working in Costa Rica now becomes symbolic of the whole system change. And that's a story that you can share. That's the story I'll give back to you as you bring your story about the actual work you're doing on the ground with the people. So the system of storytelling is the soft power. And I can give you example after example where the dominant narrative is the thing that actually shapes outcomes, that politicians listen for the dominant narrative to make their decisions, and so does business. So the louder the voice, the stronger the possibility.
Thank you for bringing that in, Trisha, and Indra for speaking to that. It's now, we've got just 8 minutes left on the call, and I know we have to finish on time for people to leave. So I want to present something that's incredibly important, is this storytelling that people have built their lives on and cultures on over time. And certainly I'm so thrilled to have been connected to you now, Trisha, and be here in Costa Rica. And the stories, Planet A for me, Indra, that you represent, that you're bringing alive, is the story that's inside of me that I'm telling, the interconnectedness and the connection that we all make. So I want to firstly, if there's just one more question we can take, I know that that's pressure on everyone to say something that's important to them, or one more question, because we do have to move to completion of what's next, because we don't want to leave people inspired or moved. What we want to leave people with out of this conversation is that future exists inside of you. What action will you take? What action will you take? So Jerome, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, there's a question in the chat from Eileen, who's in the airport, so can't answer it herself, ask it herself. So Indra, can you please speak to how soft power can help with maturing our race to move beyond domination and conflict?
Yeah, I think that almost everything that I've said in this call speaks to that. Because in the conversation between us, we can bring the far greater complexity, the far greater resonance, the far greater knowledge and awareness of our human possibility, of the individual agency of each one of us moving into a collective agency in tune with a planet that has moved into crisis. So our stepping up at this time in conversation, bringing the full complexity of our full system working, is what is needed to heal this planet and to move it into a new direction. When you think about it as power, it's a very useful way to think about it, that you are a power system, that this conversation is another power system, that our ability to communicate with each other is the power system. And I want to remind you and inquire how many times you hear that we are so disconnected that we can't make anything happen. And when you hear that story of we are so disconnected that we can't make anything happen, think about this moment now. Think about how you feel in this room, in this bit of technology, how connected we are. This is a miracle of connection. This coming into being together at this moment is the miracle that we're witnessing in this moment in time in response to the crisis. So the more conversation you can have, bringing the wholeness of yourself to each other, the more this power is unleashed, the more we're able to do what we're dreaming we can do. And as you're doing that, put your feet down on solid ground, because that's where we're standing together. It isn't just something happening in your head. It's not an act of the imagination. If you look around you, people are taking action and reforming the space that they're in. And they carry it through story and meeting and conversation.
Thank you, Indra. I'd like to complete, Indra, by sharing with everyone what's possible after this conversation. So firstly, the space that FemmeQ is holding is the story of the feminine. We are telling the story. We are bringing interconnectedness. I want to share the screen right now as to how we're doing that. The way that I remember first being introduced to working with women was in India and Bangladesh. And I was asked in the Hunger Project, who I was part of the organisation and activist for that organisation, it was what would change the system, what would change the entire system, and the culture was the ending of subjugation and marginalisation of women. Well, that was back in the 80s. And now I'm standing for this new Planet A. I'm standing for the feminine to be brought through, and FemmeQ is a transformation catalyst introduced by my dear colleague and friend, Steve Waddell, this term that we're now using, who's on the call today. Working dynamically and systemically is critical. Identifying people, initiatives, and community who are already taking action, Indra has spoken to this, and discovering where feminine intelligence is being applied by both men, women, and all genders, and where women are leading the way with these new transformation initiatives. Our plan is to make this interconnectedness real, visible, and tell the stories of where it's happening. We have just told several stories. You all have the stories, and we want to build this network. So in FemmeQ, we're building a hive where people are modeled on biomimicry, where people will identify their purpose, their passions, where they live, and how they can be interconnected and start to move the system into this new direction. We're going to map it so that we have a new global story to tell about what's possible for the future. We're developing the hive. We're creating a visual of the ecosystem that's now going to be a representative of the flourishing future we're all yearning for. And we're going to do that with a virtual Gaia where people will see all over the world what is really happening from grassroots up, and the political leaders that are actually passionate about this. There's very few, but we do see them. So that's what we're doing in FemmeQ to make this interconnectedness, the storytelling and the narratives very real. And our mission, as is Indra's, I know we share this in different ways, is the transformation, that transformation is activating imagination, awakening to innate patience to evolve and persevere to emerge and make real the imagined future. We are pioneering the possible. So firstly, and most lastly, Indra, thank you so much. And I want to point everyone, I want to stop sharing the screen, and I want to point everyone into the direction of Planet A. If you are not part of a community, and I learned this from the Days in the Hunger Project, is money makes a difference. Money is energy. Put your energy, look at your credit card statements. That's what I do every month. Where is my money going? Is it investing in what I'm saying yes to, in bringing life to life? Or is it, if it's more of the commercialism and more of the system? So I really want to invite people to support your work, Indra. It's so critical, and to support wherever we can with the investment of our love, our time, and our financial resources to bring Planet A into a very real example of the future. So we're at 10:30. Erin, please, for your closing out comments.
Yeah, our coherence and our soft power really resides in the heart. That is the unifying force. So anytime we're trying to figure it out and we're lost, that's our moment to come to our heart. And we know from the research at HeartMath that when we are coherent, we have the power to affect other people. So it is a benevolent gift to be able to stay in your heart, access love and compassion, and radiate that out. So thank you for being here. I'm feeling inspired, powerful, and unlimited potential.
Indra, in closing.
No words left. So grateful and so keen to continue to hear from everyone here. And thank you so much, Karen, for convening this space. Ultimately, that's a space that we need. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have all of your emails, and if you wish to unsubscribe once we send out what's coming in our plans for awakening and emergence, which Indra will be part of, as will our team. So please join us in awakening and emergence of the feminine intelligence. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brahm, for being here.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.